Hello friends, welcome to our e-teaching channel. So I am back with the Stories of Immortals of Meluha, part 1 of the Shiva trilogy by Amish Tripathi. So in the previous episode we saw chapter 16, that is the sun and the earth. Through the chapter we came to know that Brihaspati was proceeding his journey towards Mount Mandar while others were to continue their journey towards Meluha. Then also we saw in that chapter that Parvateshwar started to respect Shiva. After the Agni Pariksha, he had some kind of respect towards Shiva. Okay, now let's start with our new chapter, that is chapter 17, the Battle of Kunj. Where are they? Asked Parvateshwar. They are in my village, my lord, said the scared village headman. It's a short distance from here. Some 500 Chandravanshi soldiers led by 5 Nagas. They gave us 30 minutes to leave, but the Brahmins at the temple were detained. Parvateshwar clenched his fist to regain his control despite his fury. Our Pandit Ji is a good man, my lord, said the village headman. Tears streamed out of his eyes. Vraka put a comforting hand on the headman's shoulder. But the gesture only made the headman even more miserable. Not knowing the fate of the village priest added to his guilt. We wanted to stay and fight alongside our Pandit and the other Brahmins, sobbed the headman. They are men of God. They don't even know how to raise a weapon. How can they fight against this horde? Vraka let go of the headman as anger got the better of him. But Pandit Ji ordered us to leave. He told us to flee with our women and children. He said he would face whatever Lord Brahma has written in his fate. But if anyone deserves to be saved, it is them. Parvateshwar's nails dug into his skin. He was livid at the cowardly Chandravanshis for yet again attacking defenseless Brahmins and not Kshatriyas who could retaliate. He was incensed with his fate for having put him in a position where he could not take action. A part of him wanted to ignore his orders, but he was bound not to break the law. This nonsense has to stop. Parvateshwar looked up to see which voice had echoed his thoughts. The expression on Shiva's face almost rocked him back on his feet for a moment. The intense fury visible in the Nilkanth would have brought even a Deva to a standstill. We are good people, raged Shiva. We are not scared chicken who should turn and flee. Those terrorists should be on the run. They should be the ones feeling the wrath of the Suryavanshis. A villager standing behind the headman said, "But they are terrorists. We cannot defeat them. The Pandit Ji knew it. That is why he ordered us to run. But we have 1,500 soldiers," said Shiva, irritated with the display of such cowardice, "and there are another 500 of you. We outnumber them 4 to 1. We can crush them. Teach them a lesson they will remember." The headman argued, "But they have Nagas. They are supernatural, bloodthirsty killers. What chance do we have against such evil?" Shiva had a presence of mind to realize that superstition can only be countered by another stronger belief. He climbed the carriage pedestal to stand tall. The villagers stared at him. He ripped off his cravat and threw it away. He did not need it anymore. "I am the Nilkanth. all the soldiers looked up, mesmerized at the destroyer of the evil. They were overjoyed to see him truly accept his destiny. Those ignorant of the Nilkant's arrival beheld the living legend in a daze. I am going to fight these terrorists, roared Shiva. I am going to show them that we are not scared anymore. I am going to make them feel the pain we feel. I am going to let them know that Meluha is not going to roll over and let them do what they want. Pure energy coursed through the huddled mass that stood in front of Shiva, straightening their spines and inspiring their souls. Who is coming with me? I am, bellowed Parvateshwar, feeling the suffocating restraints imposed on him fall away by Shiva's pronouncement. I am, echoed Sati, Nandi, Veerabhadra, and Vraka. I am, echoed every single soul standing there. Suddenly, the scared villagers and soldiers were transformed into a righteous army. The soldiers drew their swords. The villagers grabbed whatever weapons they got from the traveling armory. To Kunj, yelled Shiva, mounting a horse and galloping ahead. Parvateshwar and Sati quickly unharnessed the horses from the cart and raced behind Shiva. The Suryavanshis charged behind them, letting out a cry louder than any Naga conch shell. As they stormed into Kunj, the horror of what had transpired hit them. The Chandravanshis had ignored the rest of the village and concentrated on the area that would distress the Meluhans the most, their venerated temple. Decapitated bodies of the Brahmins lay around the shrine. They had been gathered together and executed. The temple itself was ruthlessly destroyed and set aflame. The gruesome sight enraged the Suryavanshis. They charged like crazed bulls. The Chandravanshis stood no chance. They were completely outnumbered and overwhelmed. They lost ground quickly. Just as the Chandravanshis began to retreat, the 5 Nagas rallied them around. Against crushing odds, the Nagas grimly fought the righteous Suryavanshis with unexpected grit. Parvateshwar fought like a man possessed. Shiva, who had never seen the general battle, was impressed with his skill and valor. Like Shiva, Parvateshwar knew that the key to victory were the Nagas. As long as they were alive, the Suryavanshis would feel terrified and the Chandravanshis would draw inspiration from them. He attacked one of them with frenzied aggression. The Naga skillfully parried Parvateshwar's attack with his shield. Bringing his sword down, he tried to strike Parvateshwar's exposed shoulder. What he did not know was that Parvateshwar had deliberately left his flank exposed, swinging to the side to avoid the blow. Parvateshwar let his shield clap to his back as he swiftly drew a knife held in a club behind. He hurled it at the Naga's exposed right shoulder. His cry told Parvateshwar that the knife had penetrated deep. The injured Naga roared in defiant fury. To Parvateshwar's utter amazement, he swung his sword arm with the knife still buried in his shoulder and brought it back into play with an agonizing grunt. Parvateshwar brought his shield back up and blocked the slightly weaker strike from the Naga. He brought his sword up in a stab, but the Naga was too quick and deflected it. Swerving left, Parvateshwar rammed his shield down hard on the knife still buried in the Naga's shoulder. The knife chipped through the shoulder bone. The Naga snarled in pain and stumbled. That was the opening that Parvateshwar needed. Bringing his sword up in a brutal upward stab, he pushed it ruthlessly through the Naga's heart. The Naga froze as Parvateshwar's sword ripped the life out of him. Parvateshwar pushed his sword in deeper, completing the kill. The Naga fell back motionless. Parvateshwar was not about the Meluhan fascination with a Naga face. He knelt down and tore the Naga's mask off to reveal a horrifying countenance. The Naga's nose was pure bone and had grown to almost form a bird-like beak. His ears were ridiculously large, while his mouth was grotesquely constricted. Parvateshwar was not about the Meluhan fascination with a Naga face. He knelt down and tore the Naga's mask off to reveal a horrifying countenance. The Naga's nose was pure bone and had grown to almost form a bird-like beak. His ears were ridiculously large, while his mouth was grotesquely constricted. He looked like a vulture in human form. Parvateshwar quickly whispered what every Suryavanshi said when he brought down a worthy opponent. Have a safe journey to the other side, brave warrior. 1 down, 4 to go, thought Parvateshwar, rising. Correction, 2 down, 3 to go. He saw Shiva bring down a gigantic Naga in the distance. Both Shiva and Parvateshwar looked at each other and nodded. Shiva pointed towards Parvateshwar's back. Parvateshwar turned to see a ferocious Naga fighting 5 Suryavanshis single-handedly. He turned back to look at Shiva and nodded. Shiva turned to charge at another Naga as Parvateshwar turned towards the one marked for him. Shiva dashed through the pitched battle scene towards the Naga, who had just killed a Suryavanshi soldier. He leapt high as he ran in close with his shield in front to prevent a swinging strike. The Naga had brought his own shield up to prevent what he expected from Shiva. The orthodox up-to-down swinging strike from a good height. Shiva, however, surprised him by thrusting in his sword sideward, neatly circumventing the Naga's shield and gashing his arm. The Naga bellowed in pain and fell back. He straightened and held his shield high again, realizing that Shiva was going to be a much more formidable enemy. As Shiva grimly fought the fearless Naga, he did not notice another one at a distance. This Naga could see that their assault was being progressively pushed back. It was a matter of time before the Nagas and the Chandravanshis would have to retreat. This Naga would have to face the ignominy of having led the first failed attack, and he could see that it was Shiva who had led the counter-offensive. That man had to be destroyed for the future of this mission. The Naga drew his bow forward. Shiva, meanwhile, unaware of the danger, had wedged his sword a little into the Naga's stomach. The Naga grimly fought on, stepping back slowly while ramming Shiva with his shield. He tried in vain to swing his sword down to slice Shiva, who kept his own shield at the ready. Shiva kept fending the Naga's blows while pressing ahead, pushing the sword in deeper and deeper. In a few more seconds, the Naga's soul gave up. It slipped away as his body bled to death and collapsed. Shiva looked down at the fallen Naga in awe. These people may be evil, but they are fearless soldiers. Shiva looked to the left to find Parvateshwar too had killed the Naga he had engaged. He continued to turn slowly, trying to find the last Naga. Then he heard a loud shout from the person he had come to love beyond reason. Shiva! Shiva turned to his right to find Sati racing towards him. He looked behind her to see if anyone was chasing her. There was nobody. He frowned before he could react. Sati leapt forward, a jump timed to perfection. The Naga at the distance had released the Agniban or the fire arrow, one of the legendary poisoned arrows of their people. The venom on its tip burned its victim's body from the inside, causing a slow, painful death that would scare the soul for many births. The arrow had been aimed at Shiva's neck. It sped unerringly on its deadly mission. However, the Naga had not calculated the possibility of someone obstructing its path. Sati twisted her body in mid-air as she leapt in front of Shiva. The arrow slammed into her chest with brutal force, propelling her airborne body backward. She fell to Shiva's left, limp and motionless. A stunned Shiva stared at Sati's prone body, his heart shattering. The destroyer of evil roared in fury. He charged at the Naga like a wild elephant on the brink of insanity. His sword raised. The Naga was momentarily staggered by the fearsome sight of the charging Nilkant. But to his credit, he rallied. He swiftly drew another arrow from his quiver, loaded it, and let it fly. Shiva swung his sword to deflect the arrow, barely missing a step or decreasing his manic speed. The increasingly panic-stricken Naga loaded another arrow and shot again. Shiva swung his sword once again, deflecting the arrow easily, picking up more speed. The Naga reached back to draw another arrow, but it was too late. With a fierce yell, Shiva leapt high as he neared the Naga. He swung his sword viciously, decapitating the Naga with one swing of his sword. The Naga's lifeless body fell in a heap as his severed head flew with a mighty blow, while his still pumping heart spewed blood through the gaping neck. The Nilkant's vengeance was not quenched. Screaming, Shiva bent down and kept hacking at the Naga's inert body, ruthlessly slashing it to bits. No assertion of reason, no articulation of sanity could have penetrated Shiva's enraged mind, except for a soft, muffled, injured voice that was barely audible in the din of battle. But he heard her. Shiva. He turned back to look at Sati lying in the distance, her head raised slightly. Sati. He sped towards her, bellowing, Parvateshwar, get Ayurvati, Sati has fallen. Ayurvati has already seen Sati's injured body. The Chandravanshis were retreating in haste. Ayurvati ran towards Sati, as did Parvateshwar on hearing Shiva's call. Shiva reached her first. She was motionless but alive. She was breathing heavily as the arrow had pierced her left lung, flooding her innards with her blood. She could not speak as the force of the blow had made the blood gush from her mouth, but she continued to stare at Shiva. Her face had a strange smile, almost serene. She kept opening her mouth as if trying to say something. Shiva desperately wanted to hold her, but he kept his hands locked together as he tried frantically to control his tears. "O Lord Brahma," cried Ayurvati as she reached Sati and recognized the arrow. "Mastrak, Dhruvini, get a stretcher, now." Parvateshwar, Ayurvati, Mastrak, and Dhruvini carried Sati to one of the village houses with Shiva following closely. Ayurvati's other assistants had already begun cleaning the hut and setting the instruments for the surgery. Wait outside, my lord, said Ayurvati to Shiva, raising her hand. Shiva wanted to follow Ayurvati into the hut, but Parvateshwar held him back by touching his shoulder. Ayurvati is one of the best doctors in the world, Shiva. Let her do her job. Shiva turned to look at Parvateshwar, who was doing an admirable job of controlling his emotions. But it took one look into his eyes for Shiva to know that Parvateshwar was afraid for Sati as he was, probably more than he had been before Sati's Agni Pariksha. Suddenly, a thought struck Shiva. He turned and hurried to the closest Naga body. Bending quickly, he checked the right wrist. Finding nothing there, he turned and rushed to the other Naga dead body. Meanwhile, Parvateshwar had rallied his disturbed mind enough to realize the important task that needed to be done. He beckoned Vraka and ordered, "Place guards over the prisoners of the war. Get doctors to attend to all the injured, including the Chandravanshis." "The injured Chandravanshis have already taken their poison, my lord," said Vraka. "You know they will never want to be caught alive." Parvateshwar looked at Vraka with a withering look, clearly indicating that he was not interested in the details and Vraka should get to the task at hand. "Yes, my lord," said Vraka, acknowledgingly Parvateshwar's silent order. "Arrange a perimeter for any counterattack," continued Parvateshwar, his consciousness already drawn back to Sati's condition in the house behind. And Vraka looked up at Parvateshwar, surprised by his lord's hesitation. He had never seen his lord hesitate before, but Vraka had the good sense to not say anything. He waited for his lord to complete his statement, and continued Parvateshwar, "There should be some courier pigeons still alive in the temple. Send a red-colored letter to Devagiri, to the emperor. Tell him Princess Sati is seriously injured." Vraka looked up in disbelief. He had not heard about Sati, but wisely he did not say anything. "Tell the emperor," continued Parvateshwar, "that she has been shot by an Agniban." "Oh, Lord Indra," blurted Vraka, unable to control his shocked dismay. "Do it now, Brigadier," snarled Parvateshwar. "Yes, my lord," said Vraka with a weak salute. Shiva, meanwhile, had already checked the wrist of 4 of the Nagas. None of them wore the leather bracelet with the serpent Om that Shiva had come to recognize. He reached the last one, the one who had shot Sati, the wretched one who Shiva had hacked. Shiva kicked the Naga's torso with intense hatred before trying to find his right arm. It took him some time to find the severed limb. Locating it, he raised the remnants of the rope to check the wrist. There was no leather bracelet. It was not him. Shiva came back to the hut to find Parvateshwar seated on a stool outside. Kritika was standing beside the hut entrance, sobbing uncontrollably. Veerabhadra was holding her gently, comforting her. A distraught Nandi stood at Veerabhadra's side. His face turned into a blank expression. Parvateshwar looked up at Shiva and pointed to the empty stool next to him with a weak smile. He was making brave attempts to appear under control. Shiva sat down slowly and looked into the distance, waiting for Ayurvati to come out. "We have removed the arrow, my lord," said Ayurvati. Shiva and Parvateshwar were standing in the hut, looking at an unconscious Sati. Nobody else was allowed in. Ayurvati had clearly stated that Sati did not need the risk of increased infection. and nobody dared argue with the formidable Ayurvati on medical matters. Mastrak and Dhruvini had already fanned out to support the other medical officers treating the injured Suryavanshi soldiers. Shiva turned towards the right side of the bed and saw the bloody tongue that had been used to stretch Sati's innards so that the arrow could be pulled out. That tongue would never be used again. It had been infected with a Agnivan poison. No amount of heat or chemicals would make the instrument sterile and safe again. Next to the tongue lay the offending arrow wrapped in neem leaves where it would stay for one full day before being buried deep in a dry grave to ensure that it would not cause any more harm. Shiva looked at Ayurvati, his eyes moist, unable to find the strength to ask the question that raged in his heart. I will not lie to you, my lord, said Ayurvati in the detached manner that doctors will themselves into to find the strength in traumatic circumstances. It does not look good. Nobody in history has survived an Agniban, which has penetrated one of the vital organs. The poison will start causing an intense fever in some time, which will result in the failing of one organ after another. Helplessly, Shiva looked at Sati and then turned, pleading towards Ayurvati, who fought hard to rein in her tears and retain her composure. She could not afford to lose control. She had many lives to save in the next few hours. I'm sorry, my lord, said Ayurvati, but there really is no cure. We can only give some medicines to make her end easier. Shiva glared angrily at Ayurvati. We are not giving up. Is that clear? Ayurvati looked at the ground, unable to meet Shiva's eye. If the fever is kept under control, then her organs will not be damaged, right? Asked Shiva as a glimmer of hope entered his being. Ayurvati looked up and said, Yes, my lord, but that is not a final solution. The fever caused by an Agniban can only be delayed, not broken. If we try and control the fever, it will come back even stronger once the medicines are stopped. Then we will control the fever forever, cried Shiva. I will sit by her side all my life if needed. The fever will not rise. Ayurvati was about to say something to Shiva but thought better of it and kept silent. She would come back to Shiva in a few hours. She knew that Sati could not be saved. It was impossible. Precious time was being wasted in this futile discussion. Time that could be used to save other lives. All right, my lord, said Ayurvati, quickly administrating the medicines to Sati that would keep her fever down. This should keep her fever down for a few hours. She looked up at Parvateshwar standing at the back for an instant. Parvateshwar knew that keeping the fever down would only lengthen Sati's agony, but he shared the glimmer of hope that Shiva felt. Turning back towards Shiva, Ayurvati said, My lord, you too are injured. Let me dress your wounds, and I'll leave. I am all right, said Shiva, not taking his eyes off Sati for an instant. No, you're not, my lord, said Ayurvati firmly. Your wounds are deep. If they catch an infection, then it could be life-threatening. Shiva did not answer. He just kept looking at Sati and waved his hand dismissively. Shiva, shouted Ayurvati. Shiva looked up at her. You cannot help Sati if you yourself become unwell. The harsh tone had the desired effect. While Shiva did not move from his place, he let Ayurvati dress his wounds. Ayurvati then quickly tended to Parvateshwar's wounds and left the hut. Shiva looked at Prahar lamp in the hut. It had been 3 hours since Ayurvati had removed the arrow. Parvateshwar had left the hut to look after the other injured and make the preparations for setting up camp, since the convoy was going to stay in Kunj for some time. That was Parvateshwar's way. If he was confronted with an ugly situation that he could do nothing about, he did not wallow in his misery. He would drown himself in his work so that he did not have to think about the crisis. Shiva was different. Many years back, he had sworn that he would never run away from a difficult situation. Even if there was absolutely nothing he could do, he had not left Sati's side for a moment. He sat patiently by her bed, waiting for her to recover, hoping for her to recover, praying for her to recover. Shiva, a barely audible whisper broke the silence. Shiva looked at Sati's face. Her eyes were slightly open. Her hand had moved indiscernibly. He pulled his chair closer, careful not to touch her. "I'm so sorry," cried Shiva. "I should never have got us into this fight." "No, no," murmured Sati. "You did the right thing. You have come to Meluha to lead us and to destroy Ever. You did your duty." Shiva continued to stare at Sati, overcome by grief. Sati widened her eyes a bit, trying to take in as much of Shiva as she could, in what she knew were her last moments. Death brings to a final end a soul's aspirations. Ironically, however, it is sometimes the hovering imminence of the end itself which gives a soul the courage to challenge every constraint and express even a long denied dream. "It is my time to go, Shiva," whispered Sati. "But before I go, I want to tell you that the last few months have been the happiest in my life." Shiva continued to look at Sati with moist eyes. His hands developed a life for their own and moved towards Sati. He checked himself in time. "I wish you had come into my life earlier," said Sati, letting out a secret that she had not even acknowledged to herself. "My life would have been so different." Shiva's eyes tried frantically to restrain themselves, struggling against the despair that needed an outlet. "I wish I had told you earlier," murmured Sati, "because the first time that I am telling you will also probably the last." Shiva continued to look at her, his voice choked. Sati looked deeply into Shiva's eyes, whispering softly, "I love you." The dam broke and tears poured down Shiva's grief-stricken face. "You are going to repeat these words for at least another 100 years, sobbed Shiva. "You are not going anywhere. I will fight the god of death himself if I have to." "You are not going anywhere." Sati smiled sadly and put her hand in Shiva's. Her hand was burning. The fever had begun its assault. Do subscribe to our e-teaching channel for further interesting videos and audio books. Give us a thumbs up if you like our videos and share with your friends and family. Comment us to improve our work better. Thank you.